Toni Alicia, welcome. And welcome to everybody else who's tuning in. I'm conscious it's going to be a little while people drop in. So what I'm going to do, we're going to have a chat to Toni and Alicia for about 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll start to take your questions. So if you're in the webinar, the questions will pop up on screen and you'll be able to see the ones we're answering. For everybody watching on Facebook, just put your questions in the box beneath the screen, and we've got Ottilie, who's about 20 miles from here, who's reading them all, and she'll be feeding them to me. So yeah, without further ado, how are things in Sheffield and Chesterfield respectively? Toni, what's Sheffield like?
It's raining badly. I tell you what, lockdown was really nice when it was sunny outside. I've never had a tidier garden from that point of view. Now it's rainy. It's like lockdown's a bit miserable, really. So
is that something the same for you, Alicia?
Yeah, I was just thinking that today. I was thinking, is it the weather or is it me that's not okay? It's definitely
It's probably a bit of both. Guys, before we get talking about actually what you're doing and how you're managing, because everybody's fully aware that you're no different from anybody else in as much as what you thought was the future and you were planning towards has changed drastically. Just talk us through those first few days and week or so when all this started to become change from rumours from abroad, if you like, and it became very much reality and started to hit hard. What happened?
I think from my perspective, the day or so before lockdown, I ended up ill and I was sort of bedridden, and you sort of like, okay, what's lockdown? It's probably going to be a week or so like that. No real perception that it was going to go on as long as it has, and no real perception as to what was going to happen facility-wise. There was what people were trying to do were help you in the beginning and just, yeah, facilities will be open. There'll only be a select few allowed in. Well, actually, no, facilities are shut. So the downside of me being ill is that I couldn't go in and get loads of equipment that I would have used that would have enabled people. And then the other thing was you had the pull-on family. So people had to make decisions. So a couple of athletes that I work with live in Ireland. So they made an instant decision to jump on a plane and go home. Other people just went home and that. So people just scattered before really, for me, unfortunately, I could have put a bit more in place, and you scattered to places and dealt with it afterwards. So what I mean by that is that they'd gone home and you're like, now, okay, what can you actually get access to? What can we do? What can't we do? What equipment do you have that we can actually do? And then set a program. So whereas normally I know the environment we're going to work in, and you can set everybody's program, everybody lifts weights, I know what the weight room's like, everybody's going to do running, we're going to do this, I know the surfaces and so on. Now it's like everything has to be set slightly individually for people, because some people have got a football pitch that they can easily get to and do some exercise on. Some people have got access to a hill, some people haven't. So you have to make the sessions different.
We'll come on to that adaptation in a minute, but for you, Alicia, obviously that's Toni as coach, and he's got people running everywhere. You're one of the team. How did the run of events work for you?
It was just really weird, really. Like as soon as EIS shut, it was like, oh, it's shut, but we've got Woodburn, so we can like adapt and do things there. And then it was like, oh, everything's locked off. So it's like you can't do anything. It was like, oh, so I'm gonna have to go home. But yeah, it was just really weird. I think like as athletes, we focus on like the goal, and then we like understand the present, but we don't take full appreciation of it sometimes. And I think everything happened so quickly that it was like, oh, I don't know what to do now. Especially with everything being cancelled, it was like, oh, my goals are going to have to change and etc.
What was the emotional impact for you? Because I mean, we've all got goals and plans, but obviously, you're looking at some major competitions at that time, still potentially Olympics, which of course isn't even this year anymore. But that was, yeah, you've got probably months and months and months more or less laid out, day by day, maybe hour by hour, and then it's all ripped up. How did you cope?
It's a bit weird. I try not to think about it for the first couple of weeks because I just get really angry, and then I was just like, and then it hit me one day, and I was just like, it's okay, just move on. It's still there. You just got to graft now and in the future to still get there. But I try not to dwell about it because I was just like, I'm just going to get really annoyed.
Does that resonate with you then, Toni? Just general anger? Not that I've ever seen you angry, obviously.
Not too much anger. I don't. Well, a lot of people think I'm an angry man, but I'm not actually. Most of it's for play. But the thing is, it's the what and the why. And what you do, what training you're going to do, whether it's in a gym or on a track or whatever, that gets taken away. So you adapt and go, right, I'm going to do this training. So the what is kind of taken care of. The really difficult thing is the why has been taken. Why am I doing this? I'm preparing for a competition, which is the Olympic Games or European Championships, Junior Championships. For 2 athletes in my group, they've lost their last year juniors. The World Junior Championships isn't going to happen for them. They're not going to be 19 next year. They will be too old. So if the Junior Championships happen next year, they're not eligible. So it's when the what you can deal with, but when you take away the why, that's really difficult to deal with. So part of my role is trying to find what's the new why. Why are we doing this? Where's the focus? And the focus has moved. For most people, the focus has moved 18 months or 16 months. So,
which is a hell of a long time for an athlete who's used to training up for the next season.
It is when you deal with things in sort of 52-week blocks. So you deal with it in a year, and I've got this focus. Suddenly I'm like, Christ, am I cutting the season off at 30? And what am I going to do for 20? Do I start the 52-week block now? Well, hold on, that means I'll be ready in December. There's nothing on in December. So again, it's how you shift and shape that. But to take away the why, I think is the frustration that Alicia is talking to. It's like being injured without being injured. You're fit as a fiddle, you're ready to go. But somebody's locked the track. They've locked this. It's just like, why am I doing this? What can I do? And that's tough. That's really tough mentally, physically to deal with.
And I know full well that obviously a lot of what you do anyway deals with that mental side and looks at the motivation and how people manage themselves. But that places a whole fresh set of demands on you, because again, that's set against usually quite a relatively straightforward context, in as much as you know what's coming up and you know the flow of how they're feeling and all the preparation. So how have you had to adapt as a coach who used to seeing your team every single day, and all of a sudden all you do is this at best, a Zoom call?
Well, you try and set the work, and you get people to send you videos of any technical work, and you try and pick out a couple of things here and there. We're going to work on this. The difficulty is it's so small, and the competition is now so far away. It's like, well, what's the point of working on something really small now? Because I'm 16 months away from actually being able to put this into any context. But you kind of don't know that, because there might be an opportunity in August to actually race and compete. So one of the athletes has just received an email from the English schools inviting her to the multi-event competition that's due to take place in September in Bedford. It's a lovely invite. It gives you a why to focus on, but to the same extent, it might not happen. But you start to prepare for it, and you go, well, let's operate as though it's going to happen and develop from now to there.
What about for you, Alicia? How, once you've set the anger aside, how do you deal with your own motivations?
I think it's just a case of just like working like for the future. So just getting up and just getting it done, but also like thinking this, like it will pay off like soon. And also it's something to do. You can fill your day with like so much exercise. So that helps, it doesn't mind doing a 20, 30 circuit if it fills up most of the day. But like there is a purpose there, like underneath it all, which I think is a reassuring thing.
I mean, there's a lot of people that I speak to in sport, coaches and also athletes from different disciplines. I mean, some are doing what you talk about. Others, being blunt about it, are struggling to get out of bed some days. Is that something you're hearing from the rest of the athletic community, or is everybody? I mean, I'm guessing people cope with it in different ways. What are you picking up on?
Yeah, I think it is varied. I think some people I've spoken to are just like, oh, I did this at whatever time, or I just didn't do anything today. I think it's fine. I think as long as like you feel good and you are doing something, like it does make the most of like the time and stuff. But I think, yeah, motivation is like a really hard thing. It's like you've been working something so long and then it just evaporates and you're like, oh, what am I supposed to do now? I guess it is understandable.
Toni, go back to this why thing and the motivation. What is it with regards to, I mean, what are you doing to, I know you're saying there might be competitions because somebody's just had a thing, but on a day-to-day, week-by-week basis, I know it's not entirely your responsibility because motivation comes from within and all that, but there is an element of the coach helping drive people on. How are you managing that?
One of the primary things you have to look at, and you would do with injury as well, so it's no different, is routine. It's important that the athletes maintain a routine. They train 6 days a week. They always did. So you will continue during lockdown to do something 6 days a week. It will have structure. Monday will be circuits, let's say. Tuesday is a run, so it's all patterned out. And you got to fill the time, because it's very difficult. You know, the government says you've only got an hour sort of exercise outdoor. Well, normally most of these guys' sessions will last 2.5 hours, but there's large amounts of technical work. So you take that out, suddenly they're exercising for an hour only. It's like, it doesn't feel like they're doing enough. And with how these machines are trained, and I'm referring to Alicia as a machine here, which is slightly indelicate, so I apologize, but you're miles away, so I'm safe. So, but the thing is, you got to keep the machine ticking over. So it's important that they're doing things. So you try and fill the day and say, right, in the morning, I'd like you to do this. Here's an example of what we're doing. In the afternoon, I'd like you to do this. You're maintaining routine. Why? Because the toughest thing coming out of this lockdown is how you reestablish that routine, how you go back, it's like coming back from holiday. You know, when you were used to getting up at 9 o'clock in the morning, going out, sauntering down to breakfast, and then suddenly you go back to work and it's like, no, I've got to be up at 7 and I've got to be this and so on, and I've got the rush hour to deal with, those kind of things. So maintaining somebody's routine is critically important. So there are things, you've got to be creative. What can be done in the house? What can be done in their back garden if they have one? What can they do in that 1 hour that they can get away from?
I was going to ask you about that, actually, the creativity element, because I know from a couple of chats we've had, people, you know, you go to the EIS where you train and you've got gyms with every imaginable piece of kit for every body part, and all of a sudden you've probably got people at home with like 2 dumbbells and some resistance bands. So what specific, how are you getting people to adapt in it from that respect?
So so basically, some of the circuits have changed. I've not given them to everybody, but 1 or 2 people I've given like a pure leg circuit, which is just murderous on your legs for lactic tolerance. But that's for somebody like John, who's got a lactic tolerant event in something like 400. So to keep that element going, John has got weak calves, and part of what he needs to do calf raises. So he was like, how can I do my calf raises? I'm feeling that they're withering away and so on. So I introduced him to a thing called donkey squats or donkey raises. So which is basically, you've got to find, fortunately, he lives with his partner. So fortunately what he can do is he just basically, you bend over like that, somebody climbs on your back and the person becomes your weight, and you do donkey squats that way. So just the calf raises. So somebody's on your back. To make them heavier, he's got a weighted vest. They wear the weighted vest. You just got to find ways to just remind your body and those muscle groups to continue to function. Because if they don't, they'll switch off. And then it's going to be very difficult to switch all those systems back on, as well as the routine things. So you're trying to be creative. You're seeing what they've got in the house and how they do things.
Alicia, what's been your best ad lib when it comes to training?
I think making the most of the hill. Like, we used to run up this hill at school, and it's horrible. It really is horrible. It like goes like that, then it goes like that again. It's like the worst hill ever, but it's so nice not to run on. I've been running on grass so much. So nice not to run on grass. So I just do it all the time, and just working out sprint sessions on the hill, at the bottom, at the top. Once I was running all the way up, and these people sat down, and I was really scared because my bike was there. And then I got to the top of the hill and they just started clapping. And I was like, oh, okay.
So you're getting the audience, you're getting the crowd vibe, exactly. Performing under pressure. Brilliant.
There you go.
Yeah, I think just making the most of like the terrain, because like I completely forgot like how much harder running on grass is to running on the track. And I think just finding like little bits in like parks and stuff where you can like do like fast sessions, like it really does like make a difference.
So Toni, would you say that on that point? I mean, obviously not something that you either wanted or is welcome what's going on now in any respect, but are there actually opportunities for people to maybe because they're doing things differently, do you see there is a space to maybe get better in some areas, like Alicia in on grass, because it's a more demanding environment?
I think you try to. I think you try to pick out one or two things, so we can go away and work on something very specific if they've got the equipment, if they've got something like that. So shoulder stability, flexibility is a great one. You know, having a there's loads of yoga sessions and things like that that you can pick up on the internet and things like that, YouTube, Pilates. It's a great opportunity to work on your flexibility stuff. You can do that, you know, a flexibility session in the morning, flexibility session in an evening. You start to fill time in that routine, because one of the difficult things is just nutrition. You know, you sat at home, it's quite easy to get into bored eating. What am I doing? Oh, I just go from meal to meal to meal. And
are you talking about athletes, or are you sharing here?
This is a little bit of sharing, You just suddenly go, what am I eating? And then, why am I eating that many calories when all I'm actually doing is sitting down and I'm sedate? I don't need as many calories as I had. So you've got some of those things that you need to deal with. So again, going back to what I was saying, is you can work on things like flexibility, mobility, all of those things. You know, use a foam roller properly, because most people just roll back and forth on the thing 5 or 10 minutes and then go off and do their exercise. Well, no, let's look at doing a proper foam rolling session. Let's learn some skills, yoga being one, or Pilates or stretching and so on, that we can take out when we come out of lockdown.
It's interesting. On a nutrition point, Alicia, hopefully things are a lot better where I am here now in Gloucestershire. Hopefully they are with you, but certainly for the first few weeks, it was actually not that easy getting the food you wanted. What problems, if any, did that cause by way of getting the right nutrition in? Because I know it's something you attend to.
Yeah, I don't think it was too bad. I think, well, because I'm back home, it's a lot easier to like cook meals for everyone and stuff, so it's not too bad on that front. But my sister's vegan, so she's been trying to give us all vegan food, much to my brother's delight. But no, I think it's been like, nutrition is good because we can like proper set a shopping list for everyone and like make food and also like eat as a family, which is really nice. But yeah, I've just been like eating normally, but just all together, which is nice, and like introducing new stuff to my brother and sister and my mum as well.
Cool, brilliant. Hello to everybody that's joining on Facebook, by the way. Thank you. Apologies that there's I've been informed via text there was some technical issues earlier, but it's now sorted, so welcome. I've got a few questions coming through, so I thought I'd ask a couple to you guys. Throwing it open to the audience. Well, what Faye was asking how you're staying motivated at the moment, Alicia, but I guess you've sort of answered that. But Alison is asking, how are you having to adapt to what you're doing, which is an interesting one for you as well, Toni, but first to Alicia, how are you having to adapt to your training given the rules on social distancing? Does it affect you at all? Because obviously I know you often train in pairs and together with a group. How does that work?
Yeah, I normally just do a lot of stuff on my own, and then I've just been using the park a lot. And like I do a lot of stuff on my own anyway. And then when I'm running the park, you have to like run around people, and when dogs come down the hill and stuff, you have to wait, which messes recovery sometimes. But you have to do what's best. But and then just doing like a lot of circuits as well. I do a lot of circuits inside though, and when the weather was really nice, I did a lot of stuff outside. So it's just kind of doing stuff like on my own, which sometimes is quite long. But I do listen to a lot of music, listen to a lot of the radio, which kind of keeps you going, which is nice. Yeah, it's just really like individual, pretty much. Like it's a lot of things on your own, but also like the routine bit. Like I do stick to like a routine. Like I have to get up really early and do it to avoid like a lot of people and mess with recovery and stuff. And they just kind of get it done, but also like that's what we always do. We always do stuff early, so it's nice to do like replicate that at home.
Okay. Toni, I mean, the same sort of question to you, really. Obviously, you're, a garrulous person. You're in and amongst the team. You're seeing people all the time. How has it affected you? I know we touched on this, but I think more with regards, you talk about things being sent to and fro. How do you find it as a coach that can't actually get close and work with people, something you've been doing for like 20, 30 years?
It's frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating. You get video through from one or two athletes and they send you sort of like drills that they're doing. And if it's video, you're like, I can't affect it. You've done that drill in a particular way. I mean, you're bouncing back and forth. It's awkward. It's frustrating to be able to give people the correction. And then you're learning how to describe things. So, you know, you're taking the video, taking snapshots in the video, drawing lines on it, going back and going, look, this needs to be in this position, that. It's awkward not being able to get in there in amongst it and go, right, no, here's the correction, here's this, here's that, and influence it as much as you'd want to. But you do the best you can, I think, at a distance, and you have to be creative in that approach. So things like FaceTime, WhatsApp, those kind of calls and those things. I mean, it's easier because there isn't a huge amount of input from me. So like running sessions and circuit training, there isn't a lot of input. And there's only one or two people doing huge sort of technical work. Alicia's doing some. I think she's now got a hurdle or two, and she's doing a bit of trail leg drills. But she's very experienced, so she knows exactly what to work on in those kind of drills. So you can be assured. Whereas some of the people were new to the group this year, so I only got to work with them for 5 months or so, and then they're gone. So some of the stuff you wanted to establish isn't quite there. But you do the best you can, feedback in the ways that you can.
I won't put Alicia under pressure and ask how you're doing, but we might pick up on that later. It's like change of tack here.
Do it.
Go on then. How's he communicating, Alicia? Give him marking, score him.
Yeah, it's not bad.
You're rapidly transferring money on Monzo now, aren't you? Just like,
yeah. No. Can I tell you though? This is one of the things is you. Throughout the whole existence of being a coach is you're trying to make athletes self-reliant, because on competition day, you're about as much use as a chocolate teapot. You just, they've got to be able to cope with things. In the middle of a race, I'm not going to give her feedback as she goes over hurdle 3. So you try and do those sort of things. But it's always interesting that when you go to athletes and you haven't heard from them for days, so I send out a general sort of text, what's happening? ? It's amazing who does and who doesn't respond. And you kind of go, what's going on there? So you have to chase people up individually. So again, it's what a message to athletes. It's as much your responsibility to stay in touch with your coach as it is the coach to stay in touch with it. This is a two-way relationship. Make sure you're having those lines of communication. Even if it's a, hi, how you doing? Are you keeping well? Have you washed your hands today? Whatever. But it's important that discussion and that relationship is continued.
Brilliant. I've got a slightly different tack here that I mentioned. I'll pop this question up. Here we go. Anon. I'm a coach of junior athletes. I'm seeing an increase in parents, so this is obviously for you, Toni, training athletes because they will have the time off work.
Yeah.
With the best intentions, they're overtraining athletes with no rest, recovery, etc. How do I stop this and take back control? The floor is yours.
Whoa.
Easy one.
Whoa, an easy one to start with. Okay, so parents are getting involved. It's always great to have helpers. That's what I would say to start with. But the helpers need guidance. And I think it's fine. They're doing things, but whether it's taking back control or whether it's giving more guidance to those particular parents. If they're not getting recoveries or they're going for long runs and stuff, and it's not what you wanted to do. One of the early things for me is a lot of the guys within my group, they go out for long runs. I'm not sure. Alicia, did you go out for long runs?
Yeah.
No, she could help it.
Yeah. So they go out for long runs, and you're like, she's a power athlete. Long trudging runs is not useful for what her event is. So it was quite quick. Oh, fine. It's great you're going out for runs. How do you do them? But actually, you're better off going out doing fartlek sessions or interval sessions or what we term grass runs, which is you're just doing a loop of a large grass field and different efforts. So again, it's good that they're doing things. It's about giving a lot more guidance and steering the parent and just explaining that that's going to be useful because we don't know when we're coming out of lockdown. We don't know when the first competition is going to be. It might be 8 weeks away. And the last thing you want is somebody who's lost all their speed, all their sort of ping and all of that stuff. So they've got to give them a very eclectic list to choose from of activities. And that is how you slowly, I think, bring it back towards you. So set the recoveries, be very strict about what they are. Set the distances they should go, set the intervals that they should be doing, set the stretching. And for goodness sake, set the rest days. Do not 1, 2, 3 days on, 1 day off, or whatever it may be, whatever your cycle is, but set the timetable, set the pattern.
So I know you weren't expecting this, Tony, but would you be happy to just do a little thing that we can publish later, just general tips and advice for parents training their offspring? Because as you say, this could go on for more than likely the whole summer they'll be doing it. So you happy to catch up?
The thing to try and get around to parents is that it's not about cracking the whip. And again, you've got to judge I don't know, Anon didn't tell us. It would be useful if they come back and say, how old are these youngsters and so on that you've got? How old are they and what can they cope with? And just recognizing that, you know what, there's a young person is not a small adult. So you can't give them adult training and I'm just watering down adult training. It is different. So again, giving them parameters to work to.
Yeah. One for you, Alicia, here, which is sort of a related question with regards to parameters and because one thing we didn't really address in that was the motivation of the parents when they're doing the training. Deirdre's asking, have these past few weeks changed your attitude to how we should value athletics when a situation such as COVID-19 highlights how trivial it is? Will it thus make us better at what we do as coaches and athletes if we see it as just sport instead of an all-consuming entity that it often becomes? Now, I know, Alicia, you're somebody who thinks long and hard about the world and all different aspects from society through to politics and civil rights. So you might not be the ideal one in as much as you already, I would suspect, contextualize sport. But do you think this is an opportunity for us to reevaluate how we see and approach sport and maybe other things as well?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's a really, I say on society, I think it's really important on society and how kind of like you interact with people and how you kind of take for granted like interaction with people. I think that's really important. Like one thing that I love so much is when I'm running in the park is like people just saying like morning and stuff. And you don't really take that for granted in like a time where you don't really speak to many people. So I think that's really nice in a society. I think a lot of things might change in the way that we interact with people and be more considerate, but also taking things for granted. Like I have a garden that I can do loads of stuff in, like not many people have that. And I think that's a really important thing of what's happening. But yeah, from a sporting view as well, like I think it's nice just to see it as, I think people appreciate it much more. I remember my uncle ringing me up and saying I'm missing it all, and I was like, oh. And I think you just take for granted like a lot of things that's on the TV all the time, and now you can actually fully like immerse yourself in it when it's back on, which I think is really nice.
What's your take on that, Tony? Obviously, as a lifetime coach and somebody who is by nature all consumed by the sport and helping people improve through it, has it changed your attitude towards it at all or not?
I think I'm hoping it sticks because you start to recognise more so, you know, the work of people within the NHS. You start to recognize, yeah, you know what these people are doing? You know that there's some quite poignant stuff on TV. I recently tweeted a poem by Max Boyce, which was, you know, when only the tide went out, which was a lovely sort of reminder of things. So you suddenly become a lot more aware of that. I think you know what I am seeing is manners are better when you're queuing for a supermarket and the way people go around supermarkets and being that, whereas normally just people just plow in and they're running the basket around. And there's other things, I suppose. Social distancing is important, but what it's also led to is, I'm hoping, is closer connection to family and the people that you live with and things like that. So as we're distancing socially, hopefully from a family point of view, we're coming together a little bit closer. I mean, in some instances, if you've got siblings, it might be, don't we're too close, get out of my room, I need my space. But you start to recognize those things. And again, the other thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is there's a real heavy reliance on internet, stuff like that, which again, I think draws us away from people. But again, there's elements, it's a method of communication, you can argue. So I'm hoping there are a lot of things that stick. And I think Deirdre's right, you know, how important is sport? in the midst of all of this. It isn't that important. Life is, and what people are doing is critically important. So never lose sight of that sport is fun. It's a game. That's what it's supposed to be. We should never lose sight of that.
Brilliant. Well, talking of fun, we've got a question here. This is, again, a parent coaching thing, which I think is probably pertinent for a lot of people. Can you see that on screen, Toni, or do I need to read it out?
No,
okay, so right, I'll take a deep breath. It's quite a long one. Right, I am a coach and parent.
Yeah.
2 of my 3 children, aged 12 and 16, had qualified for national indoor competitions in Ireland, which were cancelled, and most of the outdoor comps have been cancelled as well. Mm-hmm. How do you keep them motivated and keep training and have fun to keep going, to stay fit and positive? The 12-year-old does the walk, which she really enjoys, and the other does high jump and combined events. And are there any exercises you could recommend for the older one to keep doing even without equipment?
Thank you, Anonymous. That's I think fun. What makes things fun, I think, is variation. So finding different ways of working, different things of doing, so on and so forth. So even though you're doing race walk on one side, then doing other skills, racing, walking, race walking, throwing, all those kind of things, running, jumping, plyometrics, skipping, so on and so forth. I mean, my daughter's 7, so I basically, we've drawn hopscotch in the back garden. We've gone to that sort of thing. We're doing throwing and catching, all kinds of things. And just giving it as wide as you can, really, I think is what keeps it fun, what keeps it imaginative, what keeps it stimulated. Because if you've got a challenge, then you'll go at it. So, like anything, with regards to the oldest sibling, there's lots of drills you can be doing, sort of high jump drills, jumping up off one leg, 2 legs, things like that, jumping drills, stopping drills, skipping, throwing of any kind, ball throwing, all of those kind of things that you would do to, if you can, break down the skills. Dry drills for multi-events, easier thing for me, but a shot circle's 7 feet. So, you just mark 3 lines, 2 7 feet apart, and put one in the middle at 3.5 feet. And just practicing drills. How do you glide across a circle and land and hold the position? Are you landing in good positions? There's a lot of stuff on YouTube. You can see lots of people doing drills from those sort of perspective. Other drills that you can do, again, javelin drills, things like that. Hurdle drills, static against the wall, just lifting your leg and working your trail leg. Lead leg, bending the knee first and pushing the heel across the hurdle. So again, if you can come up with 2 or 3 little drills of each event, and then spread those out during the week, that we're going to do this drill on Monday, these 2 drills Tuesday, these drills again, we'll repeat this one and add an extra one on Wednesday, and have a bit of a way of working. And again, what can you do indoors if the weather's inclement? What drills can you manage indoors? And if the weather does turn on you, then fine, we can go indoors and we'll do this series of drills and exercises. How good is your plank? Can you lift 1 foot off? How good is all of those other things? Body awareness, forward roll, backward roll. Can you do those in your house? Can you learn those safely?
I mean, particularly the first part of that answer brings me back to the fact that I don't think, hardly a day goes by that we don't get an email directed to you from a parent asking about training their child. And generally speaking, people are looking to get their kids to specialize, or they're talking about what technical disciplines we need. And then you find out the kid's like 8, and you always go back and say, become more physically literate, try more things. And that's your message. And Alicia, James has written in with a question that actually ties in really well, which is trying to understand your experience before you specialize, which is, at what age did Alicia start moving from competing for fun and then competing for competition, open bracket, notwithstanding it should always be enjoyable, close bracket. So broadening that out a little bit, thanks James, by the way, for your question. How did you get into athletics, and what were you doing before you settled in on, speed events and then obviously hurdles?
So I think I started at around 10. Yeah, a lot of my cousins did it, so I just kind of went to the local track and started doing it, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the people, I enjoyed the track and stuff. And then I think I danced a lot as well, and then I didn't go back for probably about a summer. And then I went back, and I was older, so I had to move on from like the younger group, who did like everything. We did like long, short, pros, like it was just like a lot of fun. And then I had to join like a more serious-ish group, even though it was still a lot of fun then. And then I followed my friend to the long distance group, and I was just like, this is not for me. And I was just like, oh, I can see my friend now. I just ran over to the hurdles group. And that's kind of how I started, really. And then I just went from hurdles to like sprints and stuff. I think probably the time that I stopped competing for fun, I don't know, maybe it was like around, I don't know, because if I think back to my best competitions, they were always ones where I wasn't competing for fun, but I was like enjoying the moment, and I was like really like immersed in a happy feeling, I think. So I think you're always kind of searching for a bit of fun in a competition. You know, you have to keep level-headed, but you need that sort of like anticipation and an excitement sort of way to like do really well, I think. So I think you're always searching for that side of it all the time. I don't think it should really stop.
Brilliant. Sorry to exclude other people, but James's next question, yeah, it is the same, James, is also one for you, Toni, which links in, saying I'm pro-coaching and athlete development being a three-way partnership between athlete, coach and parent. So you talked earlier about the responsibility of the athlete. How do you, Toni, keep the parents involved and supportive without them overstepping the boundaries?
There are no boundaries. There are no boundaries in terms of that. I think you have to explain what it is that you're doing. I mean, most of my group are a lot older, so the parental influence is very different at that age. Most of these guys are in their 20s and speak for themselves and that kind of thing. But there are no boundaries, and I think that's the critical thing, is that it's an open door. If you close the door and create a boundary, then I think you'll create friction. So the boundaries the doors are always open, so you're always bringing them in, and it's this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. This is what it will lead to. This is what we did before. This is the progression that we make. This is what I need from you. These are areas of responsibility that you as a parent, can you do this, do that, the other? Because let's be honest, it's bank of mum and dad. They're the nutritionist. They're the person who puts whatever's in the fridge. So again, bringing them on board, they're the person who's going to bring them down. And, you know, the awkward balance I've sometimes found is how you balance education and exams with the time I need in terms of training, and trying to get that balance and say, well, okay, exams are coming up. They're critically important. We'll back off training. Can I get some work done on a different day? How do we shift the balance? Can you do this at home? Here's some stuff that can be done at home. So when you come to see me, we make better use of the hour and a half to 2 hours that the younger ones are coming down. So woe betide you if you're not engaging hard with parents, especially with the younger ones, and keeping them inclusive, because they're part of the team. They are part of the team. As you say, it's a three-way triangle. So they're as much a partner and they're as much involved.
Alicia, on that point about balancing education, I know you've graduated now, but obviously for 3 years you were studying. Chuxley is asking, what are your top tips for balancing studies, training and competing?
You have to be really organised, which is something that I'm not the best at.
It has to be something
that's really organised. I think I got away with it in first year. I kind of got away with it in second year, and then third year it kind of crept up on me. And I was like, in April, and I was like, oh my God, I've got like 10,000 words to write, and I've got 2 months, and I've got all this training to do. Like, you have to be so organised. You have to like have your training, and then have you like do study time. Like, don't miss out on it. Just do it. And yeah, it really is all about organisation.
Brilliant, thank you.
Can I just come in on that?
Of course you can.
Just the other thing is, and I hope Alicia bears me out, talk to your coach if you're struggling, because an unhappy athlete who's bogged down with studies doesn't perform well at the track, but a coach doesn't know that until you tell them. So in fairness to Alicia, she came and told me she was struggling with stuff. And if I remember right, we said, oh, okay, do we need some time off? Do we need days off? And Alicia went, no, not really, because she didn't want to miss out on stuff. But it was like, no, hold on, we're going to train at this time. you then go and study and you then go do your work. But if I'm setting the program, I need to know, and therefore I'll shrink sessions and do things like that in order to take the burden away. Because the athlete suffers a lot of sort of anxiety and guilt, if you like, because, oh, I should be here, but hold on, I'm missing training. So, that's a critical point. So speak to your coach and tell them if you're struggling and get them to help you.
Wise words, Mr. Minichiello. Sarah's asking, as a young multi-eventer, what are the most important things to concentrate on? I feel overwhelmed with so many events to try and to keep fit and train for, and I'm probably not getting enough rest. What are the most important things to do?
Have we any idea how old Sarah is?
Unless Sarah, if you're still listening, I hope you are, or watching, then please ping that answer in. But all we have is young, so I'm guessing teenage?
That's anywhere between 13 and 19, which is vastly different. But
yeah,
it's time management, it's strengths and weaknesses. So what you got to look at is, what are you good at? What would you work on a little bit? So, and what takes a lot out of you? So the critical things with combined events, or we're talking heptathlon here, for women, is speed. You got to be quick. Speed is the critical thing. It's the underpinning element, even within decathlon. It's all about speed. So being speedy, being efficient in delivering speed is the critical thing. And then good technical models working on them. And they don't have to be, you don't have to spend a lot of time. It's not like 2 hours or 3 hours of the whole training session is spent doing one event. So you've got to break it up. And because if you think about it, you've only got the physical capacities probably to do a particular event for around about, 40 minutes. 40 minutes of shot put is a long time. How many throws would you do in that period of time? 20 plus throws, that's a lot of throwing in that period of time. So again, how you would do it. And actually, can I do a throwing session without throwing? So that's where drill work comes in. Can I break the skill down? So if it's shot put and we're looking at the glide phase, can I do 15 or 20 glides twice or 3 times a week in isolation, which would only take me maybe 15 minutes? Can I fit that in so that when I actually come to my shot put session, some of this work has already been done, so you're improving. So you've got the pattern of movement that you're trying to, as well as the actual throwing. And again, a common mistake I see is when people throw or jump, all they ever do is come off full approach and try and jump as far as they can, or flat out on a runway or across the shot circle and just throw flat out. You can't learn anything at 100% effort. Has to be around about 75, 80% effort. And you've got to break the skill down. This idea of part, hold, and how you break it down. So again, I see a lot of people training at my track who are just doing the event, just repeating the event, but they're not learning a skill. So again, coming off short approach, learning a particular skill, medium approach. You may not have to come off full approach at all in a training session to learn something. So that's how you break it down. In doing that, it's less tiring and you can fit more of that particular work in. So the next session, so if you're long jumping twice a week, maybe one of them is short approach. You're working short jumps, working on a particular, let's say, takeoff, last 2 steps into takeoff or flight through the air. And then the next session might be medium runways with a few full runways. But you can't, a competition of 6 jumps is tiring in itself. So you've got to break it down and learn the skill and then allow it to come together on competition day. The closer you get to an important competition, by all means, practice the full movement and do that. But again, do sort of part and then work towards the whole, build it back up.
Alicia, talking about things that tie you out, Mr. Stanley's asking, how are you progressing with the hang power snatch? That's an insider question.
He asked me that question and I didn't really answer it, so it's up to you.
Well, we could do with him coming back to teach us some more tricks, but it's going okay. It's going okay. It's got better, hasn't it? It's improved from the last time we tested. So we're almost at, we were almost at PB shape. So after 16 attempts.
In answer to the Mr. Stanley's question, though, it's all about confidence. That exercise is about confidence. And she's very capable. Sometimes has that little bit of self-doubt.
It's hard when you have all that weight on your shoulders, quite literally.
Literally and metaphorically with him. We're running out of time now, so thank you both. There's a couple of questions which, moving perhaps away from the specifics of the sport, because of the impact of this COVID, obviously time's changed. How are you both entertaining yourselves in the off time? Are you reading loads of books, Toni, and developing yourself as a coach, or are you just visiting the fridge? What's your go-to option?
Firstly, well, the fridge has had a few visits. My penchant for vanilla ice cream is massive, but no, I've got books and stuff and all kinds of things, and as you can see, I read a little bit. But so there's a bit of catch-up time there. But from that, but I'm busy. Like I say, I've got a youngster, so there's a fair amount of homeschooling to be done in the morning, and remembering what a tetrahedron is these kind of things.
What is a tetrahedron?
I have no idea. No, it's three-dimensional shapes and lines of symmetry is kind of, wow, okay. Remembering how you do stuff at primary school level and things like that. So that's fun. Trying to keep a 7-year-old convinced that you are of value as a teacher and they should sit there and listen to you is a different way of coaching.
Brilliant. Demanding. What about you, Alicia? How are you passing? I know you're keen on various arts. What are you doing?
Yeah, I've been doing some painting, which is really fun. Like your mind just goes off and it's just really like peaceful. So I've been doing a lot of that. I've been like, do you know, like properly listening to albums, like deeply listening to what's going on. I've been doing a lot of that, which is really fun. It takes you, like when you're running and you're in pain and you're just thinking about a drum solo, it makes things a lot better. And I've been trying to read Sartre's philosophy, but I'm only like one chapter in.
That's
quite
heavy. Hardcore. How's your Sartre going on, Toni?
Yes. No idea. I'll wait for Alicia's abridged version when she can explain it to me when my next training. In those times and rest times.
Well, I'm going to do a shameless plug for here, actually, for the magazine. So hopefully everybody who's tuned in, watching, and thank you again for doing that. You're aware of the magazine, but there's an article currently out with Alicia in one of her pastimes, which is photography, faces, places, spaces, which you can see on the screen, which talks about her inspirations amongst many things. And also we've got an article coming out about how music can actually support you moving to a mood that you need, not just motivation, but also relaxation and dealing with anxiety. So please feel free to keep checking out the magazine to see those coming up. Right, let's get back onto this. Okay, guys, right, our time is all up. All that remains for me to say is thank you ever so much, both for sharing your thoughts with us, and everybody that's tuned in. Questions, thank you. Apologies if we didn't get to your question. We had quite a lot more than the time allowed to answer, but what I will do is have a chat to both Toni and Alicia separately, and we'll do our damnedest to actually answer them either in a follow-up to this call or we'll publish something on the magazine site. So thank you both, and I'll see you very soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.